start with the opening address from a chap who I don't really have to introduce, do I? Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for BNP Chairman Nick Griffin.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, delegates and voting members. I'm not making a speech now. That's for later on at the end of the day. I actually want to talk a little bit about in effect, the mechanics of today, in particular the question of amendments, which is something of a vexed question because, as Simon says, we haven't got a great deal of time to get through this. I'd be a bit tougher than Simon and say it's got to be 5 minutes precisely for the proposers and opposers, 3 minutes precisely for the seconders, and 2 minutes for everybody else. We want to get through this. I would like to hold a question and answer session on any questions wanted with myself and other members of a panel near the end of the whole event today. I think it'll be very, very useful, but that's only going to happen if we race through this. Now, last year we took several amendments to motions, and this year we're not going to, and I want to explain briefly why. Last year the motions had come from myself and the Advisory Council colleagues, and that was all. No one else had had an opportunity to put the motions forward. So therefore taking amendments from the floor, from the voting members, was a way of strengthening voting membership. It's a way of giving voting members a core role in deciding what motions go forward. This year is different because, as you know, the motions have all come from the voting members on a regional basis. And I feel that at the last minute, to allow someone to propose a motion which could well totally alter, either just take it out of kilter and say it's not what it was saying before, or actually it could be used just to block by proposing an motion which just gets it talked, an amendment which gets it talked out, for one person, any one voting member, to be able to make a mockery of or destroy what was put forward by a whole region, I feel would be wrong. Having said which, there should be a system where amendments can be got forward. It's a question, as you know, this is a learning curve, because converting this party from a democracy into a cadre-based, the grassroots who count movement, which is what we're doing, takes time. So what we'll be doing next year, and you need to hold us to this, is that all the proposals and so on for motions are going to have to come forward that bit earlier, and then they'll be kicked back, and at that point you have the chance, the voting members in each region will have the chance to propose amendments to motions. So, and then obviously even that in the end is going to have to be in effect adjudicated on by the Advisory Council and myself, because otherwise there'd be no end to this thing. But that's the way next year there will be the scope for amendments, but it'll be through a larger body of people rather than one person on the hoof here. A number of people. The other factor, there's simply practicalities. There's, I think, 6 or 7 amendments or motions with amendments suggested. We simply could not get through them. Simple as that, let alone trying to have questions and answers at the end. So it's no offence whatsoever to people proposing the amendments. They're all actually thoroughly sensible. Let me give you just one example. One of the ones which we had is on the West Midlands motion, which is the one about the fishing and so on and so forth, and basically deporting Poles who eat carp and deporting various third world types who eat swans and things like this, or do anything with swans really. And it happens, so I'm told. There was a case in Greece involving a stork and 2 Turks. Some years ago there was, and the locals nearly beat them to death. So, just an example, a motion on this, a proposal is put forward to make this amendment. Basically at the end of it, conference also demands the mandatory and permanent deportation of all foreign nationals who are convicted of any crime in a British court of law for which they are subsequently sentenced to a term of imprisonment at the expiry of their sentence. Well, absolutely so. Damn right. As a matter of fact, if it's not already BNP policy, I think it should be. Well, it should be, shouldn't it? End of, right? So we'll say, if anyone asks me, media-wise, yeah, that's our policy. We've been saying for ages that when the mass immigration tide first started, the politicians promised that any criminal ones would be sent home. So we're just going to bring into being what the politicians promised the British people decades ago. We don't even need a policy change for that. We're just going to enforce what people were promised. But that amendment slightly misses the point on that motion. That motion was put forward specifically because Simon is a media guru and he knows how to wind these people up and get our bit of publicity out of them. That was one of the motions put forward as an eye-catching motion for the media to take out of this. And yet we know that we're going to deport all foreign criminals, but that's not as sexy in media terms and the BNP and our bigotry and all the rest of it, and ordinary people's grasp of things, of highlighting one specific point where we kick them out because they're being nasty to the swans and the carp and they're offending millions of fishermen, and animal welfare people as well. We've absolutely got them. So, to an extent, that's a propaganda motion. And it's very, very logical to say, well, hang on, wait a minute, this is wrong anyway, because we're going to deport them all. Yeah, we know that. As I say, it's propaganda. Because this whole conference isn't just about, it's mainly about how we want to run things in this party and getting it right. But it's also about how it's perceived out there. It's an opportunity. So the amendment is absolutely worthy, but it doesn't really serve any purpose. As I say, it's taken for granted anyway. So that's the position on those. Just to more or less sum up, with these amendments which haven't gone through, if it's something really pressing, and on some of them it will be, then the thing to do is we're trying to encourage what in trendy terms is a culture of debate through the voting members of the party. So we want people to go away and say, well, that one, next year this can be improved upon. We want it discussed by voting members. Now the important thing is this, that any policy like this, other than the absolute core policies of the party, which are in the Constitution, which can only be changed by a general members meeting, just take the damn thing down. Mental note on the debrief for this conference, sort out getting the banners to stay up. There'll be a few improvements for next year, but there you go. So the point on the culture of debate is it must be through the proper channels. It's not stifled through the proper channels. So all these points that can't be raised because we haven't got time. Yes, let's get those out. Let's carry on talking about those next year. Let's debate them in the voting members' meetings at regional level. But whatever this conference or any conference decides, you can disagree with it completely. That's fair enough. Amongst your fellow voting members, you can argue like cats and dogs about things you disagree with. But once this conference has endorsed something, particularly if it's by a large majority, then there's a principle of collective responsibility which applies, say, to members of the cabinet, and that is that once the majority of your colleagues have agreed on something, if you don't like it, as far as the media and the outside world is concerned, you just shut up about it. And if you want to change it, you argue with your colleagues, and you don't go running around and saying, well, the party says that, but I disagree. No, that's not to be done. As I say, maximum internal debate, but externally there's a common front. And if you don't like something and you're in a minority view, well, accept you're in the minority view. Try and change it to the right channels and the right channels only. If that's grasped, then we've almost done it, really and truly. And that is all I have to say. For now, I'll pass you over to Simon Darby, who's completely in charge of today's event. As I say, you can, by all means, argue like cat and dog, but at the end of it, shake hands, kiss and make up. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. As he said, I am completely in charge. Completely. I like that. Now then, to the business of the weekend. We have in front of us 9 motions. 9 motions that have been distilled through the regions. People have discussed these at length, and they've decided that these are the regions, the motions that we're going through from each region. We'll have people speaking on them. Obviously, there's no need to be frightened. I know some people do not like getting on the stage and speaking, but please try it, because that's probably the only way you'll overcome that little bit of fear. And do remember, you're amongst friends here. It's not as if you've got 100 barracking left-wingers or whatever out there. We're amongst friends. You're not going to be shouted down. So, we will start, and there'll be a vote after each one of these. You've all got your cards. Everyone's got their cards? Hands up if they've got the cards. Yes? Right. Looks like we're in business. Motion number 1 comes from the East Midlands, and I shall read it out. This conference believes that the BNP policy should be to abolish the use of automatic number recognition cameras and vehicle tracking transponders for the use of traffic policing. This is not simply a question of motorist rights as opposed to law enforcement, but rather a fundamental